Hey guys, this is TJ, and this is the first few turns of Old World. This is the new kind of Civ-like game from Soren Johnson, the lead designer of Civilization 4, that is focused on the ancient era. We're playing as Greece here. It's actually Philip II, so this is more like Macedon if you're really particular about history like I am. I'm just going to kind of show you how things start off. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to found a city. You can't just found cities anywhere like you can in Civ. You can only found them at specific city sites that are spaced kind of evenly around the map. So everybody's kind of scrambling for these early on. We might get to see, depending on how far we get, city sites that are left uncolonized for long enough will become eventually barbarian encampments, and they'll start sending barbarians out, much like in Civ. But we found a new city. We have to decide which of our 4 major families in our country should patronize that city. They all give a different bonus, and then the family bonuses are different for which faction you're playing as. So they won't all have, you know, a rider's faction and a trader's faction and a patron's faction. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the Argaid family, which is my ruling family. They give us 2 training per year, and then we get a free promotion on all of our mounted units. Yeah, so orders are the resource you might not be familiar with if you play Civ. We can only give a certain number of orders overall for our whole faction per turn. So even if I had, like, you know, 10 warriors, I wouldn't necessarily be able to move them all at the same time. So you can have a smaller army that has more orders available that can kind of outmaneuver a larger army if I, say, focused more on having more orders available to me as opposed to having more units available to me. So there's kind of a balance with that. It's something you can choose to focus on. Yeah, scouts, pretty straightforward. I think we all know how that works. We get a choice here. I'm going to go with the culture option. Culture is kind of the way that you tech up cities. Rather than having your entire civilization progress through ages, each individual city you have progresses its culture level, which allows you to build more stuff here, which is kind of an interesting, different way to do it. Let's go ahead and explore some of these hills. We found another city site. We found some more ruins. Let's see. Let's have Philip become pious. So, and we also found a tribe. But let's go kind of in order here. I'll talk about tribes, then I'll talk about characters and traits. So we found the Scythians. These are non-playable factions that kind of represent the less settled societies that were around the Mediterranean at this time. You know, you've got the Scythians, you've got the Goths, you've got the Gauls. So we'll observe their ways and traditions for now. They can kind of spread across the map. They're sort of in between barbarians and like a full-on faction. They're like half and half, sort of. So Philip, you know, he's got stats, courage, discipline. They can accumulate different traits. He's got the commander trait. It's a little bit like Crusader Kings. Also, you can see he's 39 years old. Leaders, unlike in Civ, they're not like these immortal avatars. They do get old and die eventually. So you can see I have Alexander. He's not Alexander the Great yet, but we'll see, is my heir. And then my wife is Olympias the Debauched. And they all, you know, they have their own traits and stuff too. You can arrange marriages. You can arrange marriages with other factions. You can arrange marriages with the great families that I showed you at the very beginning. And you can even arrange marriages with tribal factions. Like I could arrange a marriage between Alexander and you know, some Scythian princess if I wanted to. Yep, orders, I've already explained that to them. Research works, it's kind of like a deck. So the actual tech tree, as you progress along it, you will unlock cards. And then this is, you know, we actually are picking a card of what we actually want to research right now. So, granary sounds good. That helps us get more growth. Our cities, if you think about production from civilization, it's actually split up into growth, which is used to produce civilian units, and then training, which is used to produce military units. Those are two separate things. And then excess training can actually go into this pool of points that we can use for like unit upgrades and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and click end year here. Haven't really met anybody else yet. So our heir, we always have to decide how they're going to be educated. Since it is Alexander, I think it's appropriate that he studies tactics, but we could also go with rhetoric, commerce, or philosophy. Rhetoric gives you more civic points, which can be used to establish laws. The higher tier laws will cost us more civic points per turn. So you can't just like upgrade your government all the way, you know, willy-nilly as you unlock those options. But yeah, I'll show you how the laws screen works really so far. So basically every law is a choice between like an A or a B decision. So the first one that usually comes up is you can decide whether you want to be a slave society or a free society. Slave societies get +5 orders per turn, which is actually really powerful, but also all of your cities get +1 unrest per turn, so they're more prone to rebellion. And then freedom gives you science. These ones don't have any upkeep on them, but if we look at some of the more advanced laws, you see upkeep, low training, so that's going to drain our training points per turn, or low civics, that's going to drain our civic points per turn. So all of the higher level ones have some level of upkeep. Eventually you get down to stuff like monetary reform, deciding if you want to be a secular state or like very religiously intolerant and things like that. You know, in a lot of ways it plays out almost like a Civ 5 mod. It definitely reminds me more of Civ 5 than Civ 4 or Civ 6. So we can actually use our scout to harvest a resource that we have not brought within our borders yet, which is also pretty cool. It gives scouts a little bit more of something to do in the early game. It's a good way to get... here's some silver. That'll give us some money. Yep, warriors are cool. Let's see if we can just use up all of our orders here. And then I believe we will get a settler shortly here, but we haven't found an empty city site as far as I can see so far. Let's see. There's another Scythian camp, so these, unlike like regular, like just random barbarians, the tribal barbarians can have more than one settlement. So yeah, we can see Alexander became a tactics student. Workers, pretty much the same as civilization. You know, we can build improvements, like once we get the ability to build a pasture, we could go put some livestock in there. The one kind of noticeable difference is that you have something called urban buildings now. So there's rural stuff like farms and mines. Urban buildings specifically are how you spread your city's borders. So the more urbanized a city is, the more tiles it'll be able to control versus just waiting for you know, your culture to take over tiles like you would in Civ. So we'll go ahead and build a farm here. Kind of surprised we haven't found another city site yet. This is I played a couple games of this over the course of the last week, and usually I found one pretty quick, but it looks like the Scythians kind of own everything within a fairly good radius here. So you can see if you have the orders for it, scouts can move pretty far. You're more restricted by your orders than you are. I mean, they do have like an actual max movement range. Like if I have 100 orders, I can't just send him 100 tiles away. Yeah, if you have the orders, scouts can go pretty darn far. Culture, I've already explained how that works. There we go. So there's an abandoned city site. They're usually about the same distance away, so you don't have like that decision-making process you would in Civ, where you know you want to pick the exact tile your city is going to go on. They're always going to be about evenly spaced. It's not you're not going to have like dense empires versus sprawling empires like you might in Civ, which is, I'm not sure how I feel about that yet, kind of taking that part of the decision making away. But it is kind of interesting. I think it's kind of cool that city sites that just sit around for a long time will eventually become occupied by barbarians. I don't think that timer started kicking yet. Yeah, that's the early first few turns in Old World. And for everything else about this and other strategy games, keep it right here on IGN.